Hello, everyone. Thank you for checking out this special episode of Really Dicey. This is Manny, and I am here with.
Jason Durall. I'm the line editor for Runequest and Basic Roleplaying over at Chaosium. And I think we're here to talk about the new edition of Basic Roleplaying, right?
Yes, yes. So I'm really excited to talk about the basic role-playing universal game engine because I do love books that help you develop any setting, any characters, anywhere. I was a fan of GURPS, Palladium, stuff from back in the days. So seeing that this is coming back out again is to me really exciting.
Yeah.
So let's start with the basics, no pun intended. Um, so where did the idea to bring this back out again come from?
Oh, well, I don't know if your viewing audience is aware of, or if you remember the early days of 2023 when a little barely used document called the OGL came to everybody's attention. And at that time, there was a lot of concern about, what the next phase of Dungeons and Dragons was going to be like and how that was going to, affect all the developers who are using the open game license to develop new material. And at that time, there was a very, very strong feeling in the community that other games might be the way people want to go. And so we found, like, I think almost everybody in the industry found that interest in games that were not Dungeons and Dragons just jumped. And BRP, the basic role playing big gold book here, it had always been selling, I mean, like a sort of a long tail title. It came out in 2008, I think, so it's 15 years old. I mean, sales weren't spectacular, but as a result, right after the OGL event, or the sort of fiasco, if one might want to characterize it that, we put it on sale for as a 99-cent special on Drive-Thru RPG, and the sales were phenomenal. Like far above anything we could have ever even imagined. Because I mean, traditionally, when you sell something at, like a 99-cent deal, it's not, going to make a significantly huge needle bump. But in this case, we got a resounding yes from the fan community, from people wanting to reconnect themselves with this product. And I think it finally got the attention that, it had been sort of lacking for the last decade or so. People were really digging it. We got a lot of people contacting us wanting to know, is this a hint of something to come? And I think I believe, like the numbers of people submitting ideas, wanting to license it, all of this like jumped up, and suddenly we thought, well, maybe we should do another edition of it. And this tied in with a group of actual play people who were doing a pirate themed BRP based game. And so we thought, okay, well, let's do a new edition of Basic Role Playing. And we talked about it a while. We discussed, like, do we go for a really deep rewrite where we try a bunch of new rules? Do we, everything was on the table. There was no like ticking clock or anything like that. But we decided that ultimately the fans of the game wanted probably basically a cleaned up and nicer version of the game. We had been over the years noticed that it is kind of a verbose book. It's a big book, and I wanted to strip it down a bit and clean up some descriptions of things, get rid of some what I would call redundant roles, like roll this and then roll this and then maybe roll this again, and streamline a lot of gameplay. And there were a few little subsystems that I've just personally thought didn't add anything to anyone's gameplay. And so I removed those. I added a few systems that I think are quite nice and that go well with the mechanics, and always really should have been there from the get-go. But due to the fact of the ownership of these various IPs at the time that the first Basic Role Playing came out, they weren't considered, they weren't part of the Chaosium catalog at that time. And so then my goal was to edit things down, streamline it, clean it up. And we decided to go aggressive with it and have it be in full color with art from just industry giants, people like Loic Musi, Lionel Marty. We got Ossi Haikala, who's just an amazing artist who's really been working on a lot of Chaosium products over the last few years. And we solicited art from a number of others, and we, came out with a new edition of it. And it was assembled pretty quickly because with enthusiasm by everyone, I put all of my RuneQuest duties to the side and just focused entirely on basic role playing. And we got it ready to go. It is going, I think it is actually now at print.
Wow,
So
wow.
so that's how it was kind of a weird situation that a product, I had worked on so dedicatedly for years. I mean, it was a very slow development process back in the 2005 to 2008 period. It just took forever. It was a very long, slow haul. My co-writer was unable to finish it due to family issues, and so he dropped out early, and I had to carry the ball across the finishing line, working all the time, the while with the people at Chaosium at the time. And then when we came out, I mean, one of the employees joked. He said, "Could we do like a smaller, even more basic role playing?" And so, anyway, it was just an interesting experience revisiting my design instincts from 15 years ago and deciding what I think is important about explaining things and how to clear stuff up. So overall, a really fun, pretty cool experience.
I peeked into this book and I've noticed that. So years ago, Chaos put out like Super World, all
Yes,
the Fantasy World, all these different like generic settings that you can play using the
right.
basic system. But
Yes,
looks like this book incorporates the best of all those
yeah.
settings.
There was a book or a boxed set called Worlds of Wonder that had the 16-page, very, very basic role-playing booklet, and that had been a part of most products from Chaosium in that day. And then they had Super World, Magic World, and Future World. And each of these had, I would say, I mean, Super World had a couple of characters and a very short scenario. I don't remember very much about Magic World. I have a copy of it, but it didn't strike me that there was much, and I don't even think there was a map of an area. It was just play fantasy adventures. Here you go. And Future World, it actually had a bit of a setting that was kind of interesting because it managed to have space travel be more stepping through dimensional doors, so you didn't have to worry about spaceship rules. I think that was let's just say people just go through teleporting, across the galaxy rather than flying in spaceships because spaceship rules will take up a lot of space. So, and anyway, I mean, the origin of basic role playing was I used to pester the people at the Chaosium booth when I was just a fan. And I would say, hey, I've been playing Ring World, I've been playing Super World, I've been playing Hawkmoon, Stormbringer, Elf Quest, I got Worlds of Wonder. I mean, it would be awesome if you put all the rules into one big book so that I could have everything I need in one place. And then um, I had done some other freelancing for Chaosium, and then one day they said, "Hey, that big Chaosium book, why don't you do that for us?" And that was where that all started.
With this edition, with this new one, now you can. I'm assuming with the older basic one that came out in 2008, you may have some trouble converting characters from there to some of the newer products coming out because Call of Cthulhu has changed editions since then.
It
Is
has, but the underlying mechanics are primarily the same. I chose when I went and I looked at all of the major changes that had happened to the Call of Cthulhu rules, and I very carefully evaluated if I put this into the new BRP, what's going to be the effect? And unfortunately, the effects were going to be kind of like this will break many different systems down the way, or these don't work well with this other system. Like I'm still not entirely sure I would have been able to handle the percentage systems and rewriting superhero or superpowers and psychic powers, and like it would have caused a fundamental, almost a page one rewrite for the superpowers in the game because or the various power systems. And And for the most part, though, they're still, I mean, highly compatible. You can pretty much play a Call of Cthulhu game using BRP as the rules if you wanted, or if somebody has played Call of Cthulhu recently with the seventh edition, they can easily adapt to a basic role-playing game.
And also you can, if the depending on the game master, you probably can make, let's say, like a superhero character, Superman maybe, and so
Absolutely.
incorporate it into Call of Cthulhu if you wanted
If
to.
you wanted to have spaceship combat in Call of Cthulhu or characters with cool psychic powers, it would be very easy to do. That's exactly what the book is. It's for really tinkerers and people who want to either modify existing games or build games from scratch.
Okay. So what's interesting about this is that other universal game systems, sometimes it could be a little complicated because trying to incorporate everything into a
It's
book,
yes.
all the settings. But it seems like this book really does a great job in containing all that. So let's talk a little bit about characters a bit. Um,
Okay.
so uh, as generally you could explain, because we don't want to give away everything from the book. So how quickly, easily would you say is it to make
Well,
characters?
okay. Well, we have given away everything. The new BRP has been published under the ORC, the new open game license. I don't know, I can't remember what the acronym is, but and so it is now free. I mean, people can take it and they can make games with it, and as long as they publish it under the ORC, they can do what they want to with it. So we have, in fact, given the whole game away, and we wish and hope dearly that people will make some really incredible games that amuse and delight us as well. But getting back out of uh, you know, salesman pitch. Your characters basically follow the same model as many of the other Chaosium games. I mean, obviously, Seventh Sea is a slightly different game because that came from a different development lineage, and Pendragon is a bit simpler and or more simplified, I should say, because it's actually kind of surprisingly elegant version of the system. But ultimately, you've got characters. They have seven characteristics. In the BRP rules, one of those characteristics is optional. You roll 3d6, or you can actually, if you feel like it, do a point build system or some other system to develop your characters' characteristics. And everything else is basically assembling your character based on their profession, some things their problem solving ways or personality types. We've added personality traits and passions, which are from a few different Chaosium sources. Pendragon originally had passions, which had been a rule set that had been destined for Runequest, but never made it in. And personality traits first showed up in, I think, a Worm's footnotes back in the day in the 70s or early 80s. And it showed up in the Thieves World boxed set from the day when that thing was kind of cool. And now it's being used in BRP, and I'm using it also in the Lords of the Middle Sea game, which I'm working on developing at this time. And so, yeah, you assemble your characters using these abilities. Everything is still based on a percentile base, and roll low, equal or under. If you roll a critical or a special success, even more cool stuff happens.
Is there anything in there that you think game masters would be the most surprised about finding out, or some interesting new optional rules?
Um, let's see. I mean, as I said, passions and reputation are new and cool. Our reputation is in there now. And personality traits are quite cool. I've really emphasized the use of augments, which was kind of a side sort of buried in a text in the old version where it was always intended to be a core part of the gameplay, but it was, I would say, I blame old me, and that it wasn't very explicit in that if you are making a roll for something and it's really important and you really want to succeed, you can basically take you can use a related skill to try to bolster that skill or augment it. And so if you make a successful other roll, you get a bonus based on how well you did with the other roll. So you might use your mathematics to boost your astronomy skill if you happen to be a scientist of some notes. Or you can use personality traits. Like in a showdown with somebody who's done you wrong, you might use your vengeful personality trait as a bolster to your rifle skill if you want to, gun down the people who stole your cattle and burn down your house. So there's a bunch of different things like that you can do. Um, the use of doom, there's a whole section that I think a lot of people sort of just didn't really pay attention to when the game came out, and it was basically here's a fate point system where you can spend your character's power points and use them to shift roll results, not unlike Call of Cthulhu does with luck points. And you can introduce narrative bits into the game using these same points. And so, for some people who think that chaos or basic role playing doesn't have that stuff, it's had this stuff for at least 15 years, and it's been called out and made a little broader now.
I really enjoy the settings section where you talk about hybrid settings, alternate history. Can you talk a little bit about the I guess the options you can have here for game masters to develop any setting that they want?
Yeah. Yeah, well, I think the first thing that that section does is it gives game masters an idea about like what is a setting really? Like what does it include? What sort of rules enforce the style of gameplay in that setting? Because, for example, I mean, there's optional rules that just don't make any sense or aren't necessary. Like you don't need complicated rules for radiation in a swashbuckling medieval adventure. You don't need rules for space combat in a investigative horror game set in the 1920s. But a lot of the side rules are things like, do you have tougher characters? Do they have more hit points? Are they more highly skilled than other characters? And we have in the game throughout, there's a setting, a sort of a switch called power level, which gives you completely different values for how many, like what kind of characteristics you start with, what kind of skill points you get to customize your character, and how tough they are overall. And then the little budget that they can use to spend on their powers if they have powers. And so the other thing, basically it sort of looks at, okay, here's a setting. You can start with something from the book. I basically walk through most of the classic settings that could be existing from the dawn of history, like early humanity into space opera, with a few side steps to like, oh, it's superheroes, which is modern, but with an alternate angle to it. And then I talk about hybrid settings, like combining elements like throwing superheroes into your ancient Egyptian game, or science fiction into like a settling game, or mixing cowboys and aliens or whatnot, depending on whatever you want to do. And all of the rules are there. And it says, well, this is what you want to do. What kind of a feel do you want? How survivable do you want player characters to be? And then another section of that talks about adapting settings, which I think is something that I always wanted to have. I mean, I put it in the first book, but I think it's really important because a lot of times people, they don't necessarily feel like they want to invent a game setting or a world from whole cloth. Sometimes they want to just say, I kind of want to play in the Matrix. I want to do a Matrix game and I want to do it using BRP. And so this sort of says, well, okay, what do you want to do? What kind of rules are going to make sense for the Matrix? What kind of optional rules should you bring in? How do you want to handle things? Is it the world of the Matrix with like Neo and Trinity and Morpheus running around? Or is it a world kind of like the Matrix without those characters, where your player characters are the primary movers and shakers in the world? So that was, I think, the other big part of the settings book. And then it also rounds out with a few rules, optional rules that are useful for particular settings like sanity, reputation, personality traits, and the like.
When it comes to equipment, I've noticed when I talk to or interviewed some editors in the past, usually equipment, especially when you're doing a multiple setting book, can be challenging.
Yeah.
Did you come across a lot of challenges trying to put together like an equipment list especially when you have to do it by certain eras of history?
No, no. I mean, I was very broad and general in that I had like ancient like ancient melee weapons, ancient ranged weapons, medieval or whatnot. I think I called them historical fantasy, like weapons, melee weapons, historical ranged weapons, modern, and then futuristic. I decided to just keep them into broad categories and let them mix and match. The main reason is that even in this modern world we live in, people are still using weapons from hundreds and even thousands of years ago. A spear is still a very viable piece of equipment in the modern world, and people are still hunting with bows. And so the idea of I didn't want to get that too finite, too granular, because I thought that that would be just not very useful and create a lot more tables, which are always a nightmare for layout. And I wanted to keep things broad enough so that we didn't get like delve down into the here are 17 types of pole arms and minute differences into types of bows. But if there is interest and if we feel compelled enough, we might do an equipment book that gets a little more granular than that. But I think that the book now has pretty much everything you need. The one thing that I honestly just didn't want to touch back then, and I still didn't want to touch now, is the wealth. The idea I abstracted wealth into just degrees of you just have basic means, and there are different levels of wealth, everything from poor to fabulously rich. And you just basically, but when you create your character, you establish how wealthy your character is, and you can pretty much automatically get things at your wealth level. And it's only when, and certainly below your wealth level, those are just plentiful. And if you're reaching above your wealth level, you have to make some rolls or make some arrangements through the game. And that way, it's sort of, I'm not a big fan of like price lists and lots of coins, because I don't think that they adequately represent any of the way people actually spend money. Like, your characters, you have like how many gold, how many silver, how many copper. I mean, most games don't give you any sort of like, how are you nickeled and dimed throughout the day? You've got to spend it on this, you've got to spend money here, you've got to spend money here, you've got to take a bus for €2, you've got to pay a fine for this much. And so, I mean, I don't personally enjoy that kind of thing in the real world. And so I don't really think it's that fun in a fantasy setting to be constantly worried about exact denominations of money. So I kept most equipment still in that broad wealth system. I mean, if somebody were to do a particular setting book, absolutely, it might make a good idea to actually go for pricing and whatnot. But from the broad, like macro level of basic role playing as a multi-genre, all genre a book, it just didn't make any sense to have price lists like that.
Hmm. I know you sort of mentioned this already, and I just wanted to let our viewers know that there is conversion notes in the appendix section, which
There is.
to me, those are always the most important part, because most people that'll probably pick this up probably have picked up Call of Cthulhu and Runequest and so forth, or they are fans of
Right.
the books that come out. So it's really good that this section. I love that this section exists so that you can pick and play, which is not really a question. I just wanted to
Yeah.
let you know that I really appreciate that part as well.
Right. I mean, the one game that it didn't actually cover was the Rivers of London game, which was completed, but it's so new. And also, to be quite blunt, we're very lenient, or we were a bit uh, reluctant to add licensed games into our like the BRP setting, because this, BRP is forever, and we'll probably be doing another edition of it down, maybe another 10 or so years down the way. Whereas as much of a success as Rivers of London has been for us now, it is a licensed game, and so we're not entirely sure what the future of that will hold. I mean, hopefully lots of cool products and stuff in the years to
Hmm.
come. Ben loves us, and we love Ben quite a bit.
So, if do you think will be the future of basic RPG? Do you see? Um, I mean, years ago we had all these we had Super World and Magic World. Do you see something like that happening in the future, or do you
Um,
is KSM content just to have this for now?
Excuse me, that cough was not intentional. I've been talking a lot. I was running a game earlier today, so my throat's a little fried. Um, we are already working on the next basic role playing expansion book. And it hasn't been announced, and I won't reveal what it is, and we have a short list of what we think would be good expansion products, but they'll require a bit more attention than the next one, which should follow very quickly. Superworld is an interesting case in that Steve Perrin, the creator of basic role playing, and his name shares mine on, or my name is next to his name on the cover of the BRP book. He was working on a new version of Superworld when he died, and we have that manuscript, and we haven't decided what to do with it at this point. I hope that that's not revealing any great secret, but yeah. So we have that. We'll try to decide what happens and what the best way to both honor Steve's memory and see what that project holds. Magic World, I can't really give numbers, but Magic World was one of the poorest selling Chaosium products ever. There are various reasons for that, I'm sure, but ultimately, I don't know that there's a lot of enthusiasm for a product called Magic World. It might be that the Magic World, the guts, the rules, and the products, despite all the best intentions by everyone involved, it just never caught fire. It might be that there is a fantasy book that uses Magic World as its guts, but will be something different. Like it would almost definitely have a different name.
Mm.
And Future World, I don't know. I mean, that's the one big question mark. I would love to see us do a science fiction game. Some of our efforts in the past on that haven't worked out. And right now, I mean, there are so many fantastic sci-fi IPs. It would be a shame if we didn't either develop our own or license one. So I don't know any more than that. It's not a secret. I just don't know. I could be surprised and find out that we've licensed something, and I'd be like, "Oh, really?" Every so often, that stuff hits me late.
So, is there anything else about this project that I haven't asked you about that you wanted to share?
I really would just I wish I had thought to, but I really would just love to say I've been blown away by the collaboration. This was sort of, we were trying a new development style with this product internally, with rather than having me as the line editor sort of working independently with and then coming in later with a manuscript. We were sort of developing it with a very tight team and a lot of iterative feedback where we were working directly with the layout guy all the time. And the art, our principal artist, Loic Musi, was working all the time with us, making adjustments and coming together with things. And it was just a very, very sort of joyful, wonderful, collaborative effort on our part. And also one of the first times we've really worked hand in hand with our partners over at Black Monk, in that Adam, whose name I will not, his last name I won't try to butcher here because my Polish is not particularly great. But Adam was just a champion. He's working in a language that is not his native tongue. And he was turning around layouts and stuff just faster than any of us could believe. Loic, he gave us this gorgeous cover variant of the Vitruvian Man with the man and the woman in the sort of silvery pewtery gray with some colors. And we were talking, and then Adam took that image and he used part of it as a header for a chapter. And I said, "Oh, that's really gorgeous, but it might be a little dull if we just saw the same image over and over again throughout the book for the chapter headers." And Loic said, "Well, should I do something new?" And I said, "It would be cool if you could do variants of that figure, like in all these different genres, like sort of deconstructing the Vitruvian person so that we have all these multi-genres of the same figure." And in days, he was just popping them out one after the other, and each one is just amazing. I want like 12 posters of those to hang on my walls. They're so cool. And yeah, I mean, Neil Robinson, who he's the company's financial vice president, but he was sort of working as producer on this project. And he and I were collaborating on an almost daily basis. And so I would say that one of the coolest things about this product, it's not, I mean, I don't know if it's evident from the virtual product because it's still in PDF form now, but it was just an absolute real step up in the way we developed products internally. And I think that we're going to follow this model with other products within our line.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Well,
And like I said, we're already following it for the follow up to basic role playing.
hmm. Excellent. That's really, really exciting. Jason, thank you so much for taking the time
Oh,
to
happy to
talk with us
talk to
about
you.
this.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
I mean, happy to chat again whenever there's another project of great import.
hmm. And just to, I know we said this already, but this is out on PDF, and the physical copies should be on. It's coming out of the printers hopefully right now.
Oh, no, no, no. It's at the printer now. It will take, I mean, anywhere between 3 to 6 months to start hitting distribution. It's just, it has to go, the printers have to send us a proof. We approve it, it goes into print, then it ships to our European distributors, which fortunately is also in Poland where it's being printed.
Hmm.
And then it gets on boats and it goes to America, Australia, uh, the UK,
Hmm.
and then we can start selling it when it hits all of our warehouses, and then we can sell it directly. But then distribution, that takes its own amount of time, where we send it to our distributors, lovely people that they are, but sometimes they can take an undisclosed but sometimes frustratingly long amount of time to get in from their warehouses into their system so that their local retailers can order the products. So that's why we are very, very hesitant about ever giving street dates for products because there are just too many gray areas in this whole process. It's extremely difficult to know how long it's going to take for this black box shipping and moving product around to take effect.
Thank you for the clarification. And
Okay,
viewers, I will put a link in the description below for the PDF, so you can check that
thank
out
you.
now.
Fantastic. All right.
And I believe that is it. Thank you, everyone, for watching. Stay safe out there. We'll see you next time.
All right. Bye.